Hey, day one of becoming a real estate agent.
Chapter 1, let me point out to you some of the materials you've got here and how we're going to use those in class. You have your textbook, of course, and I will variously refer back to certain pages in the textbook. One thing you will notice about me, though, is I do not teach out of the textbook. I am not going to read you passages from the textbook. I don't find value in that as an instructor. That's not the way I teach. I expect that you will read the textbook on your own. Not, that's a supplement. I'm not so. I wouldn't be doing my job if I sat up here and read you what's in the book. Right? You can all read at this point in your life, I hope. And so you don't need me for that. You need me to explain the concepts that are there. But I will refer you back to pages in the book as we go along. Also, you have a binder. There's a reason it's huge. It's going to get full. Okay, right now, you only have the slides for the first 3 chapters in that binder. Every week, I will give you a new supplement of the slides. You will always have the slides printed for you so that you can take notes as we go along. I think that's really important that you have those. So whatever you see on the screen, you're going to also have printed in your notebook there. There are going to be worksheets, there are going to be quizzes. I will try to always have them 3-hole punch so that you can put it in that binder. So you're going to fill that thing up. Make sure you bring it with you. Is everybody okay with that? All right. Now, in your binder, if you want... Page number there. Uh-oh. Might got to buy us all lunch now. Broke the cell phone. Page 2 in your book, starting chapter 1. All right. Before we even get going, the first slide that you have in your slide packet here, this is a topic that doesn't come up till much later in the textbook, but I like to introduce it right away because you're going to start to encounter. Does everybody know what a suffix is? A suffix is something you stick on the end of a word that changes the meaning of that word. Right? You have a root word and you have a suffix. These 2 suffixes, OR and EE, the OR suffix and the EE suffix, they change the meaning of words in this course pretty dramatically because we use that to describe what side of the transaction we're talking about. Does that make sense for everybody? So we take one word, like offer, for example. The word offer. What's an offer? Somebody tell me what give me a definition of an offer. Forget the OR and EE for a second. Just what is an offer?
The person wants to buy something.
Somebody wants to buy something. It's an agreement, or at least the beginning of an agreement, right? We hope we're going to come to an agreement. Would everybody agree with that? It's an offer. Well, you're going to have an offer or and an offer E. The key is knowing which is which. So the OR person, I want you to put this in your notes. The OR person is the give-or. The give-or. I know that's a misspelling, but that helps. G-I-V-O-R, the giver. The OR person is the person who is giving whatever you're talking about. So in the case of an offer, the offer-or, is that most likely to be the buyer or the seller? Who's going to be giving the offer? Who's making the offer to purchase? The buyer or the seller? Who's making the offer in most cases? Think about a traditional transaction. The buyers are making the offer, right? The buyer's the one giving that offer. So we call the buyer the offer or. The offer or. Whereas the EE person is the person who's receiving whatever we're talking about. Does that make sense? So in the case of an offer, the offer E is the person receiving the offer. So put that in buyer-seller terminology for me. The seller is going to be the offer E. Buyer would be the offer or. Seller would be the offer E. Buyer's making the offer, seller is receiving the offer. Does that make sense for everybody? And you're going to see those suffixes used over and over and over in this class. And I've given you some examples of them here. You don't need to memorize all these, but these are just examples. Here's the key thing, though. You don't have to memorize what an offer or is. You just need to know what an offer is. Because once you know what an offer is, don't you know who the offer or is? Once you know what a lease is, don't you know who the lessee and who the lessor is? A lease. What is a lease? It's a rental agreement. Who would give a rental agreement? Would that be the landlord or would that be the tenant? The landlord. So the landlord would be called the what? Lessor. The person giving is the OR person, right? So a landlord would be the lessor, and the tenant would be the lessee. You see how easy that is? First 5 minutes, and you already know how to do half the vocabulary in the class. Just by knowing those two suffixes. Is everybody good with that? Good, good. All right, so let's talk about chapter 1. Chapter 1 is going to be by far the thing we spend the least amount of time on in the class. This is meant to be just a basic introduction to the topic of real estate, okay? Now, I'm going to wander throughout the class. It's what I do. You got chairs that spin, spin. You follow me, okay? If I wander, you turn. That's what you do. I cannot be trapped in one little area. I'm like a caged animal when you put me in. I can't go to that side because I'm in front of the projector. So it's like here and there. That's all I got. So, don't worry about if I'm behind you. I'll back up, okay? And I'll make an effort not to turn my back on you. I don't really like to do that. And also, I probably will not use this thing. Technology is a wonderful thing. Like I told you, I'm not intimidated by it. Microsoft Surface, thank God. Whoever created this thing, Bill Gates, let me bow at your feet, because we're going to do all the math on this thing. It's going to show up there, okay? And the nice thing is, I can send those to you as PDFs after the class as well, because it saves it as I do it. So, you're going to need to be able to see the projector. Can everybody see the projector? Are we all good on that? Everybody good? Good, good. Because that's where we're going to be doing all the math and all that sort of thing. All right, so, real estate. We're going to talk about what it is. Well, the first thing to talk about is this difference between real property and personal property. What is real property? What is personal property? That's actually a pretty long discussion. We're going to have it for a good portion of this morning. But what you need to know about for right now is real property is what we care about. Real property is the same thing as real estate. And this is a real estate class. Everything else that's not real property is called what? Personal property. So, real property has one very distinct characteristic. It's not the only characteristic, but the best way to introduce it to you is to give you the most distinctive characteristic of real property. That's real property. It's real property.
Move beyond the marketplace and keep more money in your pocket when you sell with Shopify. Set your price.
Personal property. What's the difference between those two? One moves and one doesn't. That's not the only difference, but it's the biggest one. Don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. We're going to talk about a lot of detail in this class. But if you start to try to figure out the difference between, is this real property, is it personal property, what's the first question you think you ask yourself? Does it move? Is it movable? That's going to be the major differentiating factor. Like when we talked about Adriana earlier, those manufactured homes, what do they have under them? Wheels. That's why they're not real property. They have wheels. Wheels are meant to do what? Move. Just like that chair. The house is the same thing as that chair. Personal property. You okay with that so far? That kind of a description? Because that's going to take you a long way as far as deciding the difference between real property and personal property. Here's why that's so important. You're getting a license to sell real property. You need to be able to differentiate, because when you take a client, a buyer in, and you show them a house, isn't it important that you be able to speak to them about what is included in that sale and what is not included in that sale? You see where I'm going with that? That's why this is important. It's not just important for test-taking purposes. It's important so that you can actually convey to this buyer, yes, that is part of the sale. So just look, using the discussion we've had, that briefest of discussions. If I were buying this building, somebody give me some examples of things in this room that would be part of the transaction. In other words, they are real property. I'm buying the building. Projector. Why? It's attached. Not movable. Fair enough. What else? The walls, the dry erase board, would that all be considered real property? Give me some examples of things that if a buyer were buying this building, they should not expect would convey with the building. The tables, the chairs, my laptop, that ain't going, I can tell you that. You know, my cold dead hands with that thing. Right? The camera, you people, right? You see how easy that is? Don't get yourself so tangled up in the details that you forget the most important part of this, folks, is does it move? Because if it's permanently attached, it's probably real estate. Now, there may be some narrow exceptions, and we're going to talk about the exceptions. There's always exceptions to the rules in this class. But the big key is that the thing doesn't move. Okay? All right. So, real property is land and everything that is permanently attached to the land. Now, I've introduced a word here that you're going to see over and over in the class, and it's a weird word. You've probably never encountered. Well, those of you that have taken the class before, you have encountered it, but those of you that haven't, this word appurtenant, that's like a funny sounding word. Would you agree with that? Appurtenant and appurtenance. Appurtenant means attached. That's what it means. So things that are attached to the property, we say are appurtenant to the property. That's all it means. Appurtenant just means attached. Now, here's where it gets a little bit sticky with appurtenances. As you're going to find out as we start to go through this stuff, appurtenances can be things you can physically see, like this wall. This wall is an appurtenance, and that door is an appurtenance. We talked about personal property. The primary characteristic of personal property is always that it is just movable. That is the number one feature of personal property. So let's define land. Let's give you a definition of land. Because real estate begins with land. Land is the most important thing. That's ultimately what we're selling. Land is the surface of the earth and everything above it and everything what? Below it. The surface of the earth, everything above and everything below. That is land. So when I buy a piece of land, not only am I purchasing what you can see on the surface.
Here's one thing you need to do before buying anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this.
I am purchasing things that might be below my feet. What things might be below my feet? Dirt. What else? Minerals. Oil. Water. Gold. Diamonds. Who knows? Dead bodies. Right? Everything that is below your feet goes with it. And everything what? Above. So when you purchase land, you're not just purchasing what you see on the surface, you're purchasing everything below and everything above. Does that make sense? That is the basic definition of land. Real estate just goes one step further than that. Real estate simply says it's land plus everything permanently attached to the land. So is this building real estate? Yes, because this building includes the land and what? Everything permanently attached to the land. Permanently attached could be things that people have built, like this building. What else is out there that's permanently attached? Those trees. Tarantula said the trees, right? Are they permanently attached? Yes. Absolutely. So are they part of the real estate? They absolutely are. Is that starting to make sense for you guys? So real estate is just land, which we've already defined as the surface of the earth plus everything below it and everything above it. And then to make it, to go from land to real estate, we just say plus everything permanently attached to that piece of land. So when we sell real estate, we are selling land and everything what? Permanently attached or appurtenant to the land. I love the fact that he used that word in the definition. Because the more you can use it in the definition, the more familiar you get with it. Because it's kind of an intimidating word, right? You've never heard of this word appurtenance before in your life. And so the more you get comfortable with it. Start using it. Go home and tell your spouse, that's an appurtenance. And look at you, what the hell is that? Guess what? It would do you good to have to explain it to them. Because if you can explain it to somebody else, are you ready to take a test on it? Absolutely. One of the best ways to test yourself about topics in this class, beautiful home here because it is permanently attached. Real property, same thing. Don't worry about a different definition. The book gives you a different definition. It's on the slide here. Real property is real estate. Realty is real estate. They all mean the same thing. So for the rest of the class, if you're going to use them interchangeably, whether you see real property, real estate, realty, land, they all mean the exact same thing. That's the stuff we care about. That's what we're selling in this class, is real property. Okay? Now, real property does have some physical characteristics and some economic characteristics. Don't spend time memorizing these. Again, this is just an introductory chapter. Okay? The things that make real property what it is not movable. It is indestructible.
I love BetterHelp. Therapy has truly changed my life.
I've been in and out of therapy with BetterHelp for.
And lastly, it is unique. Now this uniqueness one is probably the most important one here. Real property is unique. And what's the definition of real property? What's the first word, that four-letter word? Be careful with four-letter word. Land, right? So ultimately, when we say real property is unique, isn't that another way of saying land is unique? That means every piece of land is what? Different, unique. You can't trade one piece out for another piece. It doesn't work that way. And so that's going to be really important later on in the class when we start to talk about things like a buyer who sues a seller to force them to sell the property. They have a contract with the seller and the seller changes their mind. And they go sue the seller. Well, if they sue the seller, what are they trying to force the seller to do? Sell the property to them. What is the argument you think they're going to make in court? You signed a contract, but then think about this uniqueness thing. What's my argument going to be to that judge? Yes, they signed a contract, but more importantly, what? There's no other piece of land that can take its place. No, you can't. All the money in the world won't take the place of this piece of property because this piece of property is completely what? Different. Unique, different than everything else. We good with that? Good, good. There's also economic characteristics of land. It's scarce. Scarcity, what does that mean? Limited supply, limited resources, limited amount of it. My grandfather was a lot smarter than I ever gave him credit for in his own homespun way. He used to say, son, land is the only thing they ain't making any more of. That's what he used to tell me. That's an economic characteristic of land, right? It is scarce because there are increasingly more people that occupy this planet. And what is happening to the supply of land? It is what? Staying the same. The supply stays exactly the same. So more people occupying the same amount of space, what does that mean for the value of this thing? It's going to always do what? Increase. Unless we suddenly have some sort of a population collapse, the value of land is always going to continue to increase because there's always more people to occupy the same amount of land. We good on that? Okay. Location. Location is actually not a physical characteristic of land. It is an economic characteristic of land. It's a completely economic characteristic. What are the three most important words of real estate? You've all heard that expression. Location, location, location. Why?
Because a house in Durham is going to be different than the price of a house in
Oh, she said a magic word there. She said the house. Durham was not the magic word, by the way. Durham is almost never the magic word. She said a house in Durham is going to be a different what? Price than a house in North Raleigh. You see why location is an economic characteristic? Because location affects what? Price. Value. We value real estate based on its location. It's an economic characteristic. Okay? And then the improvements. Improvements are things that people have constructed that add value to the property. Would this building be an improvement by that definition? Yes. I think so. Does the building add value to the land?
Oh, yes.
Right? So an improvement is going to be anything constructed by humans that adds value. But not just buildings. Think about, does a parking lot add value to a property? Sidewalks. Absolutely. Fences would add value to a property. How about things we can't even see, like water and sewer? If they put water and sewer lines underground, does that add value and usefulness to a property? Yeah. So improvements are going to be any time that humans have done something to a piece of property that adds value to it. We call those the improvements. And improvements are appurtenant because they are what? They're attached. They're attached. Good, good. And then we always say that real estate or real property has this permanence of investment. And that goes back to the fact that it's scarce. There's no other investment, folks, in the history of the planet that always increases in value. Nothing else. Now, people would say land doesn't always increase in value. Well, if you look over a short enough time period, that might be true. But if you look over a long enough time period, is there a single piece of land on this planet that's not more valuable today than it was 1,000 years ago? Or even 100 years ago? It always goes up in value. And the main reason for considering where it's located. Restaurant. So, properties have multiple possible uses, but they only have one highest and best use. And the key thing about highest and best use is it can change. It changes over time because populations change, things shift. Does everybody agree with that? What is best used as a warehouse today in downtown Raleigh, or a warehouse 50 years ago in downtown Raleigh, is best used today as condos, or a restaurant, or some sort of mixed-use business incubator facility, right? You look at what's going on down there. Briar Creek, how many of you are familiar with Briar Creek? You know that area. What would that have been 50 years ago? Pastures, corn. It's not liquid. Well, for those of us who don't know what liquid assets mean, what is a liquid asset? Cash. Cash is a liquid asset, right? Cash is something that you can immediately spend on other things. It's an asset and it's liquid. It can be instantly. Other examples of liquid assets. Stocks and bonds are pretty much liquid assets, especially in today's world where you've got E-Trade and Ameritrade and all those kinds of things. You can go on your computer. If you own stock today in IBM, and you met Carty and said, I don't want to own stock in IBM anymore because I see who's working there. I'm sorry. Could you go sell it tomorrow when the market opens? Pretty liquid. If you own this building and you need the money tomorrow, is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. Real estate is a very unliquid asset. It takes time to convert real estate into cash. And that's the biggest disadvantage of investing in real estate, is it is a slow investment mechanism. It takes months in many cases to complete these transactions. In some cases, years for certain commercial transactions. To go from the time we go under contract to the time we've actually closed the deal could be more than a year in some cases. And those of you that are frowning, yeah, you got to wait till it closes to get paid too. Yeah. Welcome to a commissioned existence. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We get paid when the thing happens, not when we want it to happen. Going under contract's wonderful. Let's close though. That's when I get paid.
Hey, Patrick,
Yes.
quick question. So, the previous slide.
All of them. And so they would not be very effective at their job, right? So don't confuse that word realtor with licensee. You're here to be a licensee. You may choose, indeed, to join the National Association of Realtors, but that'll be your choice. And if you go into residential real estate, it really won't be much of a choice because you just can't do it without having access to the MLS. Everybody okay with that? Good.
Want to make the switch to Shopify? Here's how to do it in a few easy steps. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com.
Good.
Commercial, industrial, and special.
Why do you buy commercial property? You want to do what? Make money. Somebody said make money, right? Why do you buy industrial property? Make money. Why do you buy agricultural property? Similarity there, right? So I use 3 types of real estate. Residential. I bought it because I want to do what? Live in it. I own it because I want to live there. Second category, income producing. I bought it because I want to do what with it? Make money. So that would include commercial real estate. That would include industrial real estate. That would include any type of real estate that we have purchased in order to make a profit, to generate income from its ownership. Could that also be a house?
Yes.
Sure it could. Houses could be income producing properties. If the reason I buy it is to generate income, then it's an income producing property. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
So my three categories are strictly based on what the use is going to be. If I buy it to live there, it is what? Residential. If I buy it to generate ongoing income, it is an income producing property. And if it doesn't fit either one of those two descriptions, it's what? Special use. Here's why I do it this way. There's a method to my madness. Later on in the class, chapter 17, when we get to valuation, we're going to teach you that there are three methods, three approaches, three ways to come up with values for real estate. One way to value property that you do what? Live in. A second way to value property that you buy for what reason? To make money. And a third way to value special use property. So I do it as three types right away so that when we get to valuation, it makes sense in your brain why there are three ways to come up with a value for it. Because each kind of property has its own approach to coming up with a value for it. Does that make sense? Everybody good with this idea?
Yes, sir.
Good. Good. All right. So we need to talk about this idea of supply and demand. Supply and demand, they offset each other. When supply goes up, what happens to demand? It goes down, and vice versa. When demand goes up, supply goes down. Would you agree with that? So these are always against each other. You don't need to memorize any of these things, but these are examples of things that would affect supply and demand. Would you agree that the size of the population would affect the demand for real estate in an area? Absolutely. Look at Raleigh. What's the population doing?
Increasing.
Ballooning. Rapidly. I mean, for those of you who don't realize just how rapid the population growth has been in Wake County, Wake County hit 1 million people 3 years ago. So it took us, roughly 30 million years to get to 1 million people in Wake County. We're at 1.3 million right now. So we've picked up 30% additional population in 3 years. That is not population growth, that is population explosion. Does that affect the demand for real estate in our area? When the population goes up, the demand does what? Goes up, because the population is a demand, right? No? More population, more demand. So when that demand goes through the roof with this population growth, what happens to the supply of available housing? It goes down. Have any of you looked at what's on the market? It's a short look, isn't it? Because there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Here's going to be what you'll love about getting in this business. You're going to get a phone call or an email from somebody who's moving here from Cleveland. And they're telling you exactly what they want, which is wonderful. We like people to be specific. The worst is somebody just to say, oh, I don't know what I want. I hate that. Drive you crazy. I want somebody to be specific. But here's the best one. Well, I've heard great things about Cary. It's wonderful. I mean, everything I read is a great place to live. It is a great place to live, right? I live in Cary. I'm the one redneck. The quota is full. The pattern is full. They will not allow any more until I move out. That's the deal I had to sign. So like when I market my house, I can market it to a redneck.
Well, that was the first class. Obviously, this was, I say obviously, you don't know that, but it was 5 years ago. This was posted 5 years ago, so a lot of this might be different. So I'm not taking this, 100% to heart, obviously, because it's 5 years ago. But I am writing like basic things just to get a basic overview. So it's an hour-long class, but I'm listening to it and grabbing the basic stuff, which is, you know, because a lot of this is talking about the class and sometimes examples and his personal life and, you know, things like that. And sometimes I just understand a concept, so I'll just run through these, you know what I mean, every day. It's just to get an overview, basically. But anyways, thank you guys for joining me on this journey, and I will see you next time. So, bye.